Welcome to Love and Abuse, the show about helping you identify poisonous communication and toxic behavior. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. That's why it's important that you learn to pinpoint manipulative and controlling behavior so that you keep your power and your sanity. I'm your host, Paul Coliani. Welcome to another episode of Love and Abuse. Got a question for some people out there. Not everyone that listens to this show, but some. How do I stop hurting my partner? How do I stop hurting my friend? How do I stop hurting somebody in my family? I get this question a lot, actually, more than I expected. When I created this show and I started talking about emotional abuse on my other podcast, The Overwhelmed Brain, I didn't expect to get questions regarding the person that was being emotionally abusive or controlling or manipulative. I didn't expect to get questions from them asking me how to stop doing it. So it's a surprise to me to hear from people out there, you, if you're listening and you feel like you might be in this category. It's surprising to me to hear from you, for you to want to change, to improve, to maybe evolve from who you are and how you're being into something, I'm going to say, greater than yourself. I mean, you are great, but greater than who you're being now. And so to the survivors of emotional abuse and difficult relationships, I'm not necessarily talking to you, although this episode could be very helpful to you. I am talking to the people that are perpetrating this behavior, that are doing the, quote, bad behavior. I shouldn't even quote it. It is bad behavior. When you are abusive, controlling, or manipulative, when you're lying, you're deceiving, when you want someone to change and you're doing things to try to make them change, then it is bad behavior. So I want you to think about the people in your life that you might be doing this to. Again, I'm talking to the people that they're like the ones that reached out to me and said, you know what, I do things that I'm not proud of. I want to change. I'm hurting my wife, my husband, my partner. I'm hurting the other person. And I don't like that about me. I want to change that. This tells me that there is an increase in the level of consciousness and conscientiousness in the world. This tells me that, some of us are waking up. Hey, I don't want to hurt my partner. I want to have a lifetime with my partner. I don't want to hurt my friend. I don't want to hurt my family. I want to have a loving relationship with them. Yet I do things that hurt them. How do I change that? And so, step one, acknowledgement. You're acknowledging it. That's awesome. Step 2 and 3 and 4, let's talk about in a minute. Right now, I want to make sure that whoever's listening, this is really about connecting with people in a way that's not controlling them. I think that's a good way to look at things and look at relationships, is how do I connect with someone without wanting them to do what I want them to do? That's tough. It really is. I've had many relationships, almost all of them in my past, where I wanted to control the outcome of a situation, of the relationship, of the person. I wanted them to do the things I wanted them to do. And so I was very good at crafting communication and events and situations in a way that benefited me, so that I could continue working on controlling them so that they would do what I wanted them to do. Even trying to make them feel a certain way. Like I want that person to love me more. I want that person to feel bad if they don't love me. Or I want them to feel bad if they go out with their friends and they don't include me. I mean, this is where it gets into the seedy underbelly of abusive behavior, is you're subtly making someone else feel bad for not doing what you want them to do. That is control. That is passive aggressiveness. I mean, that's what I did. I was very passive aggressive. I would say things in a passive way, or I wanted it to hit them in a way that hurt them just enough so that they felt bad. And if they felt bad, they're going to do something that I want them to do. It's like when I was married. I've talked about being married to my wife for about 4 years. And during most of that time, I made her feel guilty for what she ate. I made her feel guilty for other behaviors too. I wanted her to feel bad enough to stop doing the things I didn't want her to do. In her case, she was an emotional eater, and I didn't like when she ate junk food. So I would make sure that I could instill guilt in her. Not one of my shining moments. I don't feel good about it at all. But I did it. And I live with the knowledge that I made her feel bad for several years. So thank God she left me. She had to. She had to leave me. And that was the beginning of my healing. I had done a lot of healing before that, but the true beginning of my healing was when she wanted to separate. That made it real. That made me realize that if I don't change my ways, I'm never going to keep a relationship. Because that was my first marriage. I was like, oh, I'm finally married. I'm going to be married forever. At least that was the plan. But it didn't work out that way because of my behavior, and she kept distancing herself from me emotionally and physically until there was really not much left. And I thought, what is wrong with her? And so I'm telling you this because I'm giving you the perspective of the former emotional abuser and the healed person, the one who did evolve from that behavior, found a way out of the abusive behavior. It is possible. If you're listening and you have done this to your partners, to your loved ones, to your friends, it is possible to graduate from that toxic school and be someone else and do something else and stop controlling others. Because that's really what it comes down to. I mean, you ask yourself the question, do I control other people? Or ask yourself the question, is what I'm about to say or do an effort to control the other person? I think that's step 2 after the acknowledgement of step 1. I'm going to lose my steps here because I didn't write these down. But step 2, asking yourself, is what I'm about to do or say an effort to control the other person? I want you to define control as well, or I'll help you define control. Control for me is looking at someone else and saying, I want to control that person's thoughts and behaviors so that they do what I want them to do. And even if you don't include the word thoughts and behaviors, just saying, I want that person to do what I want them to do, you have to follow that up with, and by doing what I'm about to do, does that accomplish my goal? So let me rephrase that. Is what I'm about to do or say an effort to make them do something that I want them to do? So by doing this, by asking yourself this question, it helps you understand your own thought process. I mean, you might say, yes, of course. I want that person to stop drinking. I want that person to stop smoking. I want that person not to eat junk food. I want that person to go exercise. I want that person to rub my feet. Whatever it is the thought behind what you want them to do. Is that also followed up with some sort of action that you're going to take or something that you're going to say? And this is where you have to be super diligent and super careful inside you about what next step you take. The diligence is being really observant of your own behavior and diving into your own thought process. Is what I'm about to do or say an effort to change them? Is it an effort to control them? Is it an effort to make them do something different than they would want to do by themselves, than they would normally do? Like if you want them, let's just say, to stop smoking. And this is just a minor example. There are major examples we can talk about, but I want that person to stop smoking. So I'm going to make him or her feel guilty Every time they light up that cigarette, I'm going to give them that look. And I'm going to make them feel guilty. It's not a look of love. It's disdain. It's maybe hate. And maybe you say, I don't hate that person, but I hate that behavior. But what do they feel? They feel, oh, this person hates me. Now, you may say to them, I hate that behavior. Would you please stop doing it? And that's reasonable. I mean, you can say that. I hate that behavior. Can you please stop doing it? You may not get the results you want from that, but at least it's telling them what's on your mind. It's expressing it instead of covertly giving them that look or saying something that's passive-aggressive that makes them feel guilty. Something like, oh, great, my clothes are going to stink again because you're smoking. So passive-aggressive, but you're trying to get a point across. And your point is, I wish you would just stop smoking. No offense to the smokers out there. I'm just using this as an example. Because some people are married to smokers or around smokers and they don't like it. So let's just use, a real world example here. So the look comes up and the attitude comes up. And then maybe you're angry for a few hours because they lit up. And then maybe you're friendly again because they haven't lit up and they're trying to hide it from you because they don't want to deal with that, even though they want to smoke. So we have to look at their behavior and what they want to do and what they would normally do and come to, let's do another step here. What is it, step 3? Come to a realization that they're going to do behavior that we may or may not like, but it's something that they are either inclined to do, have a propensity or proclivity to do, have a desire to do, and are going to do it whether you like it or not, perhaps, or they won't do it, but they'll resent you because they know you don't like it, and by doing it, they know it's going to upset you, and they don't want to deal with your upset, so they would rather not do what they were normally going to do and hold resentment toward you, but at least you're not upset and they don't have to deal with that. So again, I'm talking to the people that want to control others. When you want to control someone else and you actually go through with it in some way, shape, or form, whether covertly, passive-aggressively, or overtly, you have to be really careful in your approach because you don't want to control. Because if you control, that's when you start creating a rift in the relationship. And that rift is the degradation of love. It's the dissolving of connection. And so when you want to control someone, and I said this on my other podcast, when you want to control someone, it is the opposite of love. That's tough because you want them to do what you want them to do. And you want them to do it. You don't just want them to do it, you want them to want it. And this is what we're trying to control. You can't control someone else's wanting. You can't control someone else's desires. You can't do it. And when you try, you create the rift. You dissolve love. You erode it. It's like my article on judgment in the overwhelmedbrain.com. I call it Judgment, the ultimate relationship destroyer. And it is when we look at someone and we don't want them to do something and we are judgmental. We are critical. We either say things or do things either overtly or subtly, and we make them know in so many words how we feel about it, even though we know that they have a desire to do something the way they do it or be the way they are. You can't control their desires. You can't. This is something that you have to let go. Trying to control someone's wanting or desires is almost like categorizing yourself as a slave owner. And I don't mean to be hurtful about that comment. I'm not calling you a slave owner. I'm asking you to compare yourself in a way that when you want to control somebody else, what does that mean? Because slave owners do want to control other people. But what I'm talking about is the slavery of someone's desires. This is like if someone came up to you and said, I want to take your desire to do these things away from you. If you have a love and a desire to read, and someone comes up to you and says, I don't want you to read anymore. It really bothers me. In fact, I'm going to spend a majority of our relationship trying to control your desire to read. And that means I'm going to give you dirty looks. I'm going to be purposefully irritating and frustrating. I'm going to withhold love. I'm going to withhold, sex if you're in a romantic relationship. I'm going to be late for our appointments together. I'm going to be passive aggressive. I'm going to talk down to you sometimes or a lot because I don't want you to read. So I'm trying to help you eradicate your desire to read, because what's going to happen is a new stimulus response. You're going to say, every time I have a desire to read, he or she gives me that look. Every time I want to go be by myself with a book, he or she comes up with some alternate plan and I have to do something else. And it really bothers me. So I'm starting to lose my desire to read because the reward is punishment. And so this is what controlling people do. They'll change your internal rewards to punishments. And when that punishment is what you think of, what ends up happening is you have, as the victim of emotional abuse, you'll have a conflict inside of you. Your conflict is, I want to do this thing, but I can't. So I'm fighting myself to do it because if I do, this other person will be mad at me. And since I want love and attention and support from this other person, I'm going to squash and squelch my own desire to do these things. And so this is what emotional abusers will do, is they will enslave your desires. And this is very tricky and very deep, and I haven't put this all out on paper yet, so I'm kind of stream of consciousness here right now. But this is something you can ask yourself. If you feel like you're the perpetrator of bad behavior, emotional abuse, or what have you, ask yourself, am I trying to change their desire or wanting of the thing they're about to do, or the things they normally do? Am I trying to change their desire or wanting? Because if the answer is yes, then this is an acknowledgement. Go back to step one. And this gives you more to chew on. This isn't even part of the healing process yet. This is just more to chew on. Because I want these things to start churning in your brain. And as the gears spin, this information will start sinking in and reveal to you who you are, how you've been, what you do. It will reveal to you a pattern inside of you that you're either not going to like, or you're going to want to change, or maybe you don't feel anything about it at all. And what's going to happen is that you'll be able to determine just how difficult you are to be with, because you're going to understand yourself more. And what happens is the other person that is receiving this from you, they don't even know how to begin explaining what's happening to them. They don't even know how they're being manipulated or controlled. They just know they feel something is wrong. There's something wrong with this relationship. There's something difficult about this relationship. I mean, not in the moment. They can't think in these terms of, oh, he's just trying to enslave my desires. It's not going to happen. This is the result of me thinking about it 24/7, going through the process of healing, understanding what I've done to my partners over the years, getting to that point where I fully realize that there's a certain type of behavior that is beneficial for a relationship, and there's a certain type of behavior that will destroy a relationship. And so you take these steps that I've talked about and start to apply some understanding of your own behavior. And this will help you get a grip maybe on your own behavior, even if you can't change it yet, even if you're not ready to change it, even if you're afraid, because this is what happens. When I was trying to control the people in my life, I was afraid that if I didn't control, I wouldn't get what I want. If I didn't get what I want, then I wouldn't feel loved. I would be abandoned. I was walking around with this fear of abandonment. And when you walk around with fears, the behavior that comes out of you is usually not functional. It can be. You can control different aspects of it and say, you know what, I feel fear, but I'm going to do the right thing anyway. That's the best thing you can do, but it's also the scariest. When you can feel the fear and say, you know what, I feel the fear, but I'm going to do the right thing anyway, that is healthy behavior. Because what you're saying is that I'm not here to control other people. I'm just going to have to deal with my own stuff. Dealing with your own stuff is the key. That's the key. That's not the answer. I'm not saying that's what you do. See you later. I'm saying that's the start. That's the key beginning step for you to understand that what you see in others and what you don't like about what they're doing is not about them. It's about you because you don't like it and therefore you want to control them. Now, let me just make a differentiation. I'm not talking about when the other person is difficult and abusive in some way, and you have to become difficult and abusive yourself just to get through to them, just to get your needs met. I'm not talking about that. That's a different set of circumstances, a different scenario, although it does apply. It does apply because when your behavior changes to try to control them, then you take away all the time and energy and effort that you need to put on yourself and stop focusing on them and do what you need to do for you. That's a different scenario, even though when you put the focus back on yourself, you get to do the things that you need to do for you instead of controlling them. That is the key again, you working on yourself. But when you are in a relationship where the other person is difficult or emotionally abusive, and you then become difficult or emotionally abusive, that's not necessarily who I'm talking to. I'm talking to the person who has been this way for a long time, maybe most of his or her life. Maybe most of your life, if you've been controlling and manipulative to another person and you want to change that, that's who I'm talking about. Because I want you to be clear that your behavior, if it's been difficult, if it's been controlling, and the other person is unhappy because of the way you're acting, and you actually feel bad that they're unhappy because of your behavior, that if you don't make a change, you will lose their love. You will lose them as a person in your life. And this is what I want to make sure that you're clear about, is that if you do find yourself doing behavior that is not loving and is controlling, and I want you to burn that into your mind, the opposite of love is control. If you are trying to control someone, that is not loving them. That is not allowing them to be who they are. That is not supporting their happiness. It is controlling them so that they'll be a certain way for you. It's selfish. I don't want to insult you. I don't want to offend you. But if that's what you're doing, it is. It's selfish. You're trying to put your needs and your wants first and make them conform to your needs and wants instead of allowing them to want what they want. Because here's what happens. When you allow someone to want what they want and you support their happiness, even when you disagree with it, what ends up happening is they find you the most attractive person in the world. Whether that's romantically, platonically, in family, you are going to be their rock, their amazing support system, someone they can rely on, someone they can trust, someone they can look at and go, wow, even through the thick and thin, you stuck with me. Even though you didn't like some of the stuff that I wanted to do or some of the decisions that I wanted to make, you stuck with me. Do you know how much that means to me? You're going to make them your biggest admirer. That's not the goal. It just happens. That's what happens when you allow someone to be themselves. I'm going to let you be yourself, and whatever you choose, I support. And then the tough part is, even if you choose not being with me, it's still supportive, it's still love, and it's definitely not control. And if you can do this more and more with the people in your life, especially the closest ones that we usually end up trying to control, at least the type of person I'm talking about now, you'll find out what they really want. You'll find out what their true desires are. You'll find out how much of a connection that you have, instead of being so fear-based that if they make another decision and it doesn't include you, that you need to control it. And now you're trying to control them to love you, and it just won't work because control doesn't equal love. And so let's put a step 4 in here. Step 4 is all about empathy. Empathy is the primary driver of your behavior when it comes to other people. And what I mean by that is if you're in a dynamic where there is control or emotional abuse or manipulation, then what you have to try on is empathy. So when you ask yourself that question, is what I'm about to do or say an effort to control them, you're going to ask yourself, am I being empathetic? If I was that person that I'm about to control, how would that feel to me? And just switch roles. I mean, that's all you have to do. Just switch the role. All right, if I was the smoker and I really enjoyed smoking cigarettes, and my husband or my wife or my girlfriend or my boyfriend gave me that glare, and I knew they didn't like it, but I loved it and I enjoyed it. I just wanted some time to suck on a cigarette and enjoy the few minutes that I have and connect with myself. It's a spiritual experience, whatever. It's a spiritual experience, or it's a relaxing, it's a de-stressing experience. If somebody wanted to take that desire and that feeling away from me, how would I feel? Because when I try that on, I'm going to hate them. I mean, that's what comes up for me. How dare someone else take away this feeling? And then there's a mix. There's a conflict inside of me when I try this on. I'm thinking, well, why don't they want me to be myself? Why are they trying to control who I am? Why are they trying to control what I do? And then I'm going to think, well, we've had a great time and I love that person. So I have this conflict inside of me of hate and love. What do I do with that? This can be part of crazy making. You can drive yourself crazy. If you're the victim of someone else's attempts at control, you're going to feel like you can't win either way. And then to protect yourself, you're going to want to guard yourself. And that means putting in an extra layer of emotional armor around your heart. And when you do that, you're just a bit more distant away from that person because they're hurting you by controlling you, or attempting to control you, or making you feel guilty, or making you feel bad for what you want to do with your time. And I'm not saying that we need to allow other people to do whatever they want. They can go cheat on you. They can talk badly about you to all their friends, and they can go to your job and tell your boss that you're a drunk. There are things that people can do that are really not nice. I'm not talking about that. I mean, if that happens, that's over the top, and that's someone who's probably being emotionally abusive in many other ways. Those are the types of people you really can't communicate with. You really can't have a relationship with. If they don't change, if they don't experience empathy, and they don't care how you feel about what they're doing, I'm not talking about letting people get away with murder here. I'm talking about everyday stuff. This is what happens, or even some of the major stuff in your relationship. What are the major problems in your relationship that keep coming up that all have to do with control? I don't want him to do that. I don't want her to do that. I can't believe he feels that way. I can't believe she feels that way. Look at the political climate. I can't believe you're a Republican. I can't believe you're a Democrat. It's just nuts how we can't let other people have their own thoughts, have their own beliefs, have their own values, that we want to control them so that they think like us, so that they are on our side, so that they do what we want them to do. We skip the empathetic part, we skip the compassionate part, and we just want the world to be like us. And when we do that, we hurt people, and we distance them, and we make them not want to love us. We put the ideas in their head that we're not safe, and we're not. When we do things like that, if you're the type of person that wants to control others, and it's very clear that you are not allowing them to be who they are and think how they think, you're going to lose them, either emotionally or physically or altogether. You're going to lose them. And so this is why it is vital to understand your own behavior and how it affects someone else, and how you are trying to control situations, control outcomes, and change who people are. One thing I learned throughout my relationships is that when I finally decided to let go and let people be who they are and make their own decisions and make decisions that I disagreed with. When I finally decided to do that, I created the strongest bonds in my life. I created the strongest relationships in my life. Instead of being judgmental and controlling and manipulative, I decided to let the person be who they wanted to be, believe what they wanted to believe, try not to convince them to do anything or change anything, and see what happens. And sometimes the thing that I wanted them to stop doing, they would stop doing on their own. This is what happens when you let go of control, is the thing that you want them to stop doing. If you're trying to control it, they'll probably keep doing it because what you're trying to do is take away their independence and their autonomy and make them feel like they can't make their own decisions. And what we end up doing is resisting that. As human beings, we want to resist people trying to take our liberties away. So we resist it and make different decisions. But as soon as someone leaves us to our own devices and says, you know what, you can do anything you want, I'll still love you anyway. Then we get to assess and be self-empowered and initiate our own analysis of what's going on in our life instead of waiting for someone to judge us for it. And when we initiate our own analysis or analyses of what's going on in our life and what decisions we're making, we're going to find solutions that work for us. This is all part of trusting the process. We have to trust the person or the people that we're around to make decisions that work for them until they realize they don't work. And a good example of that, let's just say that with the smoker example. You're in a relationship with a smoker and you don't like when the person smokes. So instead of trying to change them and stop them from smoking, you redirect the focus on yourself and you ask yourself, you know what, do I really want to live with a smoker? I don't like smoke. I don't like the way my clothes smell. I don't like the way their clothes smell. I don't like the way the furniture smells. I don't want to live with a smoker anymore. So what are you going to do? Instead of trying to control them and change them, you would make decisions for you. You know what? That's not what I want, so I need to get out of this relationship. Or I need to stay away from them when they smoke. Or I will take a few weeks off and come back. Whatever the decision is, but you are making it for you instead of trying to change them. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have a conversation about it. That doesn't mean you can't say, I really don't like smoke. I don't like being around smoke. So, you don't have to change. I'm not asking you to change. I'm just letting you know that it affects me. And then see what they say. They might say, well, I've been thinking about quitting anyway, and that'll give me some incentive. So I'm going to try. And maybe it'll work out. Maybe they quit and maybe you're good. But if they say, you know what, I tried to quit before and it didn't work, and I really like smoking, so you're going to have to work with me here. Then you come back to yourself and you ask yourself, well, is this something I can accept? Is this something that I can be okay with? Because if it's not their fault. It's not your fault either, but it's your responsibility to do what you need to do for you. Not try to change them, not try to control them, not even get angry with them. How can you get angry with them? That's what they want to do. It's like somebody getting angry at you for wanting to read or watch TV. That could happen. But you don't want someone to control your desires or try to change what you want to do. You want to be able to come up with those changes on your own, without coercion, without control. And that's the best kind of improvement someone can make. When you can do that on your own, you know what, I'm done eating all this sugar. I'm going to cut down on sugar. If that's what you want to do for you, that's great. I support you. Or the smoker says, you know what, I really need to quit smoking. I heard it's bad for me, so I really need to do it. Whether or not this relationship continues, I need to do it for me. That's a great response. But at least it didn't stem from someone saying, you better quit or I'm out of here. Because this is part of coercion. This is a threat to the other person that if you don't change your desire, your inner wanting, your inner needs even, then I will withhold love from you. I will withhold attention. I will withhold support. I won't care about you. And that's why it's important to access that empathy, to understand that if you were that person and they came along and said that or did that to you, but let's just say it's something that you really enjoy doing or the person you really enjoy being, somebody wants to take that away from you, how would you feel? You got to access that empathy. So this is a very deep topic. I'm working on material for this. I don't know if it's going to be another ebook like the Mean Workbook. I'm not sure what it's going to turn into, but if you are the emotional abuser, the one who controls, the one who manipulates, if you find yourself doing that and you want to evolve from that, you want to heal from that so that you can allow the people in your life to be who they are and you want to love them and not control them, stay tuned because that can change your life. I look at my past and every single one of my relationships failed because I wanted to control the other person. And when I finally stopped doing that, I finally have a successful relationship. This is how it works. This is how it's supposed to work. You know the saying, live and let live. It's just a matter of not being so afraid to allow someone to be who they are. When you take out that fear and you access that empathy, you give them the freedom to choose what they want to do with their life, with their time. And that's the best feeling in the world. When someone you love takes a step back and says, I won't interfere with your choices, you feel free, you feel loved, you feel supported, and you definitely don't feel controlled. And so I want to leave you with this. There's an article on my other website, theoverwhelmedbrain.com, called Judgment, the Ultimate Relationship Destroyer. I mentioned it earlier, but I want you to check it out. Go to theoverwhelmedbrain.com and in the search field, type the word judgment, and you will find that article. And that's going to help you if you are the controller, if you're the manipulator, if you're the emotional abuser, to help you understand how I was able to evolve from being so judgmental, so controlling with my wife, and reached a place of healing and stop living in such fear that I would be abandoned in my case. Fears cause us to control. We just have to know that fear exists, and sometimes we just have to take a chance and have faith that things are going to work out if we just let go of the control. Share this with others that might benefit. Love and Abuse is the official podcast of the Mean Workbook. The workbook is an assessment and healing guide for difficult relationships. If you want to pinpoint the exact behaviors causing the difficulties in your relationship, including identifying all the signs of possible emotional abuse and control and manipulation, head over to loveandabuse.com. And just a side note, I've heard from a lot of people who took this test with their partners just to find out if they have anything going on in their relationship. And sometimes it's a surprise. Sometimes the people taking it don't really believe that they're doing bad behavior. But when they find out, it can cause some trouble, it can cause a ruckus, but at least it gives you a starting point to start healing anything going on in your relationship. Again, you can find that at loveandabuse.com. This show exists to remind you that you are not alone and you're not going crazy. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. You deserve honesty and sincerity. You deserve to be treated as worthy and significant. Because you are. Thank you for joining me today. We'll talk again soon.